Good evening and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 24th. If you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda, and I would like to move the finance for Lewis up to number 4, so under general public comment. If there's no objections, a motion would be in order. Motion by Mike.
With adjustments.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. General public comment. Is there anyone of the public that would like to speak? I don't see anyone online, and we don't have any public here with us. So we will move on to Lewis. You're up, Lewis.
Good evening, everyone. So I have a few items on the agenda tonight. I'll start by just giving you an update on the vans. So all 3 of the vans that we ordered have arrived in Rutland. There has been a slight change in plan. We were supposed to be sending one of those vans off to another company called Mobility Works to have it upfitted to be handicapped accessible. But at this time, due to the backlog, it's gonna take many months to get that done, and we didn't anticipate the vans taking this long to come in. So they do have a van that's currently in process of being upfitted. It's the same type of van that we have ordered. And so we could purchase that from them. We actually purchased it from the Formula Ford place. They sell it to Formula Ford. It's a similar price than we planned on, and we'll have that van available more on a better timeline. We would probably receive that in the middle of September. So then we would only be purchasing 2 of the vans that we had planned on. And then we would be purchasing the 3rd van from that Mobility Works currently is working on through Formula Ford. Those vans, the checks were cut today. I plan on taking delivery on Friday, and I am working with Bill to have those go to the schools that are in the most need for them at this time. Any questions on the vans?
So can Bill tell us where the schools, which schools are receiving vans? We know that the one van's going to Rutland Town, right? We already kind of decided that.
Right now, I mean, we're still finding need, and obviously need changes on the first day of school this time of year. But right now, we're gonna house one in Rutland Town, and then one between Proctor and West Rutland. That's where the immediate need is.
And then we have one more.
And we have one more coming. We kind of have to look. There wasn't, you didn't do a lot of your transportation through vans, and I assume that's something new. So you have a lot of your special ed students going through Betcha Transportation right now. So once the vans are in, and we look at the routes, we're going to look at what we can use the vans to supplement the Betcha Transportation.
Oh, okay. Lynette?
Bill, what about Rutland Town's old one? Where is that one going?
So that one, the board agreed for that one to be traded in,
Okay.
and that's going towards part of the cost of the upfit of the new vehicle.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that went through or not. Okay.
Along with the one that's at West Rutland, or the one that was wrecked, or is that getting traded in as well?
So we're taking the funds from the salvage funds from
Right.
the one that was in the accident, plus the funds from the one in Rutland Town. And then the rest is being funded through the our IDB money, which was a grant we received last year.
Right. But is there a vehicle at West Rutland right now?
There is a Ford Transit Connect at West Rutland that is a regular ed vehicle.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mike?
What's the cost difference, Lewis, between the purchase and buying it from Mobility?
We had planned on approximately, I think, 52,000, and this is coming to 54.
Any other questions? So just help me, so West Rutland has a gen ed vehicle now and a truck, or just the gen ed vehicle?
Just the gen ed vehicle. The trucks are currently
Proctor
located
and
in
Pullman.
Proctor and Pullman.
Okay, so one van's going to Rutland Town, one's going between Proctor and West Rutland, and the other one is going where? I mean, I just wanna know where they're gonna be housed, because that was one of the concerns when we were ordering. One, where they're gonna be housed, because where they're going to be housed, then we had talked about, Mike had spoken about, one, having some kind of, I don't know what you wanna call it. A book, a journal, or something like that, so we don't end up that, oh, it's 10,000 miles past the oil change, or, oh, Susie drove it and she smashed in the corner, but nobody knew about it till Johnny got in to drive it. So, and I say that
So the
because
current-
we had that issue.
So the current plan is one is going to Rutland Town to replace their Toyota Sienna. One is gonna go to West Rutland, and that'll be shared between West Rutland and Proctor, based on need. I think the higher need right now is in West Rutland, because they're transporting a student from Rutland Town to West Rutland every day. And then when the third one arrives, that one will replace the one in Rutland Town, and the Rutland Town one will then move to Proctor.
Okay,
And then the ongoingly, they will change based on where the need is, and if we can determine that we can use those vans to transport students to VAC or whatever it is, then that will determine where the vans are located.
okay, and did you determine if that was a normal fee, or if that was a strange, that cost
Based-
was,
Based on your question today, no, not yet.
Okay. okay, that's fine. Okay,
So is there a plan to try to rotate them around so that, I know the handicap one might be a little bit more difficult, but the other one's because of mileage, so that we try to keep a balance on the mileage?
The plan is not to rotate them based on mileage, it's to rotate them based on needs, so, I mean, right now, if there's no need, then they would, in one of the other schools, then they would stay. Right now, West Rutland, Proctor, and Rutland Town have requested them based on needs that they have identified to Bill or I. If another school identifies a need, then that will be evaluated by Bill and his team and determine, where the higher priority is.
Well, I was looking at miles, so like if the one in Rutland Town is only coming into the city, that's gonna have less miles on it than the one in Proctor and West Rutland. What I was trying to do is to balance the mileage, so that over a period
Okay.
of time, that they kind of balance out.
I misunderstood your question. Yes, that's something definitely we can look at down the road. I don't think that's an immediate thing, but yes, if one van is being utilized a lot more and has higher mileage, and we may wanna move that to a less usage town, so that we don't have one with 60,000 miles and one with 10,000 miles.
Right.
Yes, that is something we would evaluate.
Thank
Okay.
you.
and then are we creating some kind of journal like we spoke about when we first decided to purchase them? So that if I'm driving the van and going to VAC on August 24th, I'm in the van to, whatever, 3 people traveling to VAC, returned it, I haven't crashed.
It's a fleet vehicle log or something
Yeah,
like that.
something like
says,
that, yeah.
Before you get in it, you
Process-
check it. Go ahead.
There is currently a log in the special ed vehicle in Rutland Town that when someone goes somewhere, they have to put the date, the mile start date, the mile end date, so it has the mile start date matches what's on the speedometer when they start.
Okay,
The mile end, I think I said date, but mile, end period, whatever you wanna call that.
sure,
Matches the speedometer when they end and the purpose of the trip. And I believe it also has a spot for their signature or their name or whatever. So that is the current process.
okay, so as long as that's in all 3 vehicles,
And there's a process, like if a check engine light comes on, who do you tell who takes care of that right away, et cetera? So it
Yeah.
doesn't sit for 2 months with the same problem because it's going among different places, so
Right.
just tracking that.
okay. So what I'm hearing is that there is going to be there is a fleet journal, it's going to be in all vehicles, all 3 vehicles, and there's going to be some kind of scaffolding that says, if there's an issue, this is who the contact is.
Yes.
Any other questions about the vans? Okay, what else do you have, Louis?
So in the packet was just, mainly just an FYI, it was the meal prices. I think in the past you have done a motion to approve those. These are, so right now all students are eating for free, but if there's, for à la carte or students getting second meals, there would be a cost, as well as a cost for adult meals. So this is, and I do have the note at the top saying that first reimbursable meals is free for both breakfast and lunch. But we do need to have prices in place, just for second meals and for adults.
Okay, and this is a standard increase pretty much for everyone in our area? Other districts?
Yeah, in the past, we've increased it. We do have to meet certain criteria, so we have been increasing it approximately 10 cents each year.
Okay. Any questions on the price increases?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed, meal prices.
Any discussion?
I was just curious why the adult meal didn't change at all, Louis?
So the adult meal is set, that was actually a pretty significant increase last year. It was, I think, low $4, I don't have the exact price in front of me. But because of the reimbursement rates being so high last year, because of the program we were in, the adult price has to be higher than the reimbursable rate that we get from the state. So we increased it, I think, about 70 cents last year. Based on the fact that we had increased it so much and those reimbursable rates are going down with the new program that we're in, I thought it was sufficient. We are covering our costs. Our cost is $3.94. So I thought that was sufficient enough to cover our costs. And so I left it the same this year.
Thank you.
Eric?
With Wells and Middletown Springs on here, and they have their own in-house food programs, why is that?
Because the prices this isn't just a vended service price. This is a meal prices for all schools.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And we did agree a few years when we merged to keep the price constant for all schools, just to make it easier and be more consistent.
And like you said, it's only for the second meal or an à la carte for teachers. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
She might have just been delayed.
Amanda? Okay. I'm guessing that was aye in favor, Amanda.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
The service isn't great. There's a
No,
little
no.
lag. I apologize.
That's fine. I thought maybe you were just completely outraged by the numbers that Lewis had given us. Okay. All right, Lewis, what else do you have?
So next item, so we ended the surplus. So GRCSU general fund ended the year with a surplus of $52,218. So there was a summary in the packet along with the year-end financials. So that refund has not been refunded yet. So typically in the past, we have not refunded that in the same year. We've usually refunded it the following year in the form of a refund check that goes to offset as a revenue for next year. I assumed at the time that I did this that we wanted to continue that, but usually the board does discuss that and make a decision. The two options at this point, because the books have been closed, is to refund it in this current year, which would be FY23, or build it into the FY24 budget and refund it in FY24. The board usually has done it in the following year, which would be FY23 and not FY24, but you do have that choice. The refunds have generally been, since we've merged, they've been the same percentage as the allocations for the assessment that were billed to the districts. And so I have provided what those assessment allocations were, the percentages, as well as what the refund would be based on that surplus amount. And I listed some of the significant reasons which are causing the surplus. So there's two revenue variances, there was the assessment being down by $7,000, and that was due to the board agreeing to waive part of the IRA deficit. If you recall that discussion, we actually planned on waiving up to $35,000 for IRA, but they did get some revenue at the very end of the year that was unanticipated from the state. It's the same revenue that many of your districts got for that unenrolled tech center students, as well as they had one student that had moved out, so they had some savings. So their deficit did drop, and it only required refund waiving approximately $7,000 of that assessment.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the big one is our indirects from the grants. So we had $99,000, almost $100,000 in miscellaneous revenue increases due to those indirects, and that was for that's what we pull from, like the title grant, IDB grant, ESSER. We did not pull any indirects from ESSER 2. So we, because we were running a surplus, we saved that for this current school year or the next school year. And we have earned quite a significant amount of indirects from that grant, but due to the fact that we had that surplus, we thought it best to save that. And then for expense-wise, I listed some of those significant variances. Nothing too significant, so if there's any questions on any of that, for the general fund, I'll take those, and then we can talk about special ed.
Questions?
I did also list the fund balances at the bottom there. So food service also ended with a significant surplus. It was approximately, I believe, 150,000. So we are right now sitting on a food service surplus of $208,000, and that would apply to Quarry Valley and Rutland Town. Wellsprings runs their own food service account, so that they would not be part of that. And the main reason for that is the reimbursement. Since COVID, the reimbursement rates have been significantly higher than they were prior to COVID. We are going back into a non-COVID program, which is Provision 2. So we could potentially see, prior to COVID, we were running right around break even, small deficit. So we could see us back into that situation, but we do have plenty of surplus there to cover it. We've also been using some of that surplus to buy needed supplies or equipment in the food service program. That money does need to stay in the food service program. We can't move it outside of the program. So like we just bought a new stove in Proctor, we bought some stuff for the salad bars, just small pieces of equipment and supplies that are needed to keep our kitchens in better shape. And since we have the money right now to spend there, it's a good time to replace those items. On the special ed side, so we also ended the special ed account with a surplus of $233,000. That surplus has already been refunded and is accounted for in all of your year-end district balances. So there's no additional refunds to be given for that. But you can see what your refund portion was at the bottom of that second page. And those amounts would match if you looked at your summaries that you got at your local boards that were accounting for your surplus. All of our local districts did end with a surplus due to varying reasons, some more significant than others. Some of the main reasons for our surplus, our ineligible actually was pretty close to our budget. This is the first year we actually had a decrease. We were under our estimates were higher than what our actuals were, so we did see a refund in some of our districts for those ineligible amounts. But I think one of the biggest reasons is just salary and benefits. We had several open positions this year that we couldn't fill, and those did result in savings, as well as we had some savings in tuition and excess costs. And all of those, when our expenses, because we were still in a reimbursable model last year, because we had a decrease in expense, we also have a decrease in revenue. Our revenue was driven from our expense, but the net was that $233,000 surplus. Any questions on surplus?
All right, and how would we like to refund the money from the first page of the handout? In FY '23 or FY '24?
I'll move to, refund the assessment in FY '23 for,
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, so everyone will receive that refund in FY '23. All right, anything else, Louis?
Amanda, did you have a question?
I think there's just voting that way.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So the next item is budget timeline. So the timeline was in the packet. So this year, like at you local districts, which we have discussed already, we are moving the budget process a little earlier, to give us more time to do some more planning. So, we're in the month of August, we're discussing the budget timeline at this time. We will be looking at, tonight, we will discuss a little bit, we have some bullet points to go over. We'll have a short discussion on budget priorities and things that the board wants us to look into, so that we can incorporate all of that items into our first draft. In September, we'd be looking at the first draft of the budget, which is a month earlier. Typically, we present that first draft in October. So that'll give us one extra month to review or make changes. October, we'd be looking at the second draft. And then, as in the past, we'd be looking to have a finalized SU budget in November, so that we can incorporate those assessments, those final assessments, into the local district budgets. Any questions on that timeline? If not, I'll just go into some of the discussions for around budget. So I think the first topic, and I haven't heard, but I'm assuming Chris is there.
Yes, I'm here, Louis.
Okay, so the first thing we're gonna discuss is just around, just staffing. If you wanted to talk about that first, Chris, or?
Yeah, so we've had these discussions at all of our local boards, as we look at the impacts of staffing on our budgets, and I think from an SU standpoint, we are going to be looking at just various ESSER-related positions. We'll be taking a look at just basic structures, things. It's important for us to really kind of, I talk more of a value add. I think that's important for us to really look at positions from superintendent all the way down to custodial positions, just to see exactly, what is necessary, where we're at, what we need to be, and what we need to do. So the same thing we'll be doing with building administrators, local budgets around, look at the staffing and doing projections. Where we do the same thing on the SU level, where we're taking a look at our current staffing models and look to see if there are any redundancies or attempts for consolidation, or what we can better streamline resources, or if we're happy with where we're at, then we will then have a proposal to the board to discuss during budget time that here's why we feel that all these positions are necessary. So I mean, staffing is important, but I know that our budget's 80% of it tied up in staff. So if we are going to be looking for monies or dollars, we would take a look at staff. We also want to make sure we're not just cutting staff to cut staff. We just have to be very strategic with that as well. So, and I know that's the concern that we've discussed since the start of COVID and with ESSER is just around ESSER funded positions, and we are. I've talked with Lisa, I've talked with Bill, I've talked with Louis and Greg about ESSER funded positions, about building out a plan for us to move off of these funded positions and building out capacity. And what may look like. So we may have a projection for this year, but also start to look at projections for 2 or 3 years down the road. So.
Okay, so are we talking about, like we did at local budgets, board expectations, board priorities, board setting like that for this budget, or we're just waiting for you to come back?
So I think it's one, like, just as we did local, these are just some discussions that just things to consider as we move forward. And I think, just with the staffing, from an SU level, we will take a look at, where we're at, where we need to be, and those be some discussions that we have as a board.
Okay.
And so also, we had put together a central office PowerPoint, probably, I think it was 2 years ago, especially with this year with we have several new board members, and I'm sure, some board members, both new and old, don't know all the positions at central office and what we really do at central office and how that differs from the school. So I think it's important for us to go over that PowerPoint at the next meeting. If you are amenable to that, it probably would take about 15-20 minutes. But I think that coincides with the budget presentation, and in order for you to really be able to review a budget, you need to understand exactly what's going on in central office, what we do, what each team does, so that when we're talking about funding, you understand how much funding is necessary for those type of either departments or positions.
Okay. Personally, I think the concern, going forward, looking a year out for me, are ESSER funded positions and what those look like. And we've had conversations even at our local boards, about, I don't know, I'll just say reallocation of ESSER funds, perhaps, that, for Quarry Valley, that we see things in a different capacity. So, I don't know how that's going to then impact the SU. So, yeah, for me, that's the big concern, ESSER positions, because those can either be passed on to us and completely blow our budgets, and I think that's no disrespect to us, but that's more than you just telling us what those positions are doing. I think there has to be some data behind some of those positions, and at this point, I'll say personally, we haven't seen that. So I think that's fine. Our next meeting is actually the retreat for this board, so that would be fine to have, I guess, the little hierarchy snapshot of how things work at central office.
And so when I was even referring to the positions in the PowerPoint, this was actually put together before ESSER existed. So, I mean, it doesn't even mention anything about ESSER and ESSER positions. It's more like business office, technology, curriculum, stuff like that. And so I think each department currently has a couple slides with some information about their departments. And I think, I don't want to speak for Chris, but we agree that we have to have a solid plan for those ESSER positions, and Chris, Lisa, and I meet regularly about ESSER funds and are working on a plan for those positions to make sure that they have minimal impact on local budgets by the time those funds are gone, if even no impact.
Correct. And I'm trying to think of this. When we sat before this board and talked about the ESSER positions, it was clear to us, it was made very clear to us that, and we made it very clear, or at least I felt made clear, that our goal was not to just staff and then 3 years down the road say, well, guess what, now we're saddled with these costs. I think our goal was, with this money, was to, get us through this recovery, to assist, and, kind of build out some capacity within our current structures, whether it be SU-wide, local district, and school-based. And I think that's still our goal, is that with our current model, that as we have these ESSER-funded positions, that we are looking to build out capacity and wean ourselves, to this and move forward without providing more additional costs at the SU level or at the local district level. I think that has not changed one bit. If there is a discussion through strategic plan over the course of the year where we may see value in one, I think there are discussions we take a look at, well, where do we find that cost without just adding additional costs. So if, say, there's an extra $80,000, I think we do look at redundancies. We look at, across to see, well, how do we find that money, or what does that look like? But I've always said that, I don't like just continue to just add money on top of the budgets. I think we really have to be strategic, and like I said, but this was done, and this what these funds are for, were to build our capacity to assist us with this recovery, but was not meant to, in some ways, kind of, backdoor additional staff members and say, surprise, now it's in the local budget. So,
Okay.
these are discussions we do have, and we know that they're, that these, we are very, very transparent, very open with the staff members who are staffed with these monies, that, this money will go away, and that's just the reality of the situation. So, right, so.
Okay, I just wanted to be very clear about that, rather than going back and doing a lot of work and then coming in this board having a very different expectation about what that is, so.
Correct.
Okay,
Can I just say something else that's tangentially related to this, is just, just inspired by other conversations, about recovery in general, and I don't know if you all are feeling it, but, I feel like the state is like, okay, we're recovered, it's been a year, get over it, not in so many words, but just, that's the gist of it, and this thing that's happening to everyone globally is a huge impact for decades to come. So I just want us to be aware that grant funding is going to go away, but the needs are still going to be there. And I'm not saying that we're going to fund everything locally that's been grant funded, but I just also feel like the state is rushing folks, to educators especially, to like, move on, you should be recovered by now, and our students and our families are just not. So there's a lot of need that's going to be there that may not have been there prior to this global pandemic, so, especially in the education world. I mean, we're at the state level.
but I
we're
think
feeling
that's
it.
where the value base comes in.
Exactly.
And I think that's also where we have to be crystal clear when we're looking, if we're moving positions down, that those are, in my opinion, front-facing
Yes, right.
positions to students. I think that has to be our number one objective.
Yeah, highest student impact, sort of, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
anything else, Louis?
Yes, so just a few more bullet points. So we talked a little bit about staffing, and the next thing is just staffing wages. We know that we settled the two master agreements last year for multi-years, and so we know those are gonna have impacts, so we'll have to look at what those impacts will be for our budget. We had FY '23 budgeted already before we had settled those contracts, and what we settled on is not what we had budgeted, so and we've been able to account for those overspends in other ways for FY '22 and for FY '23, but when we look at FY '24, we know those costs are gonna be compounded for the last 2 years. So those will have an impact, and we'll have to look at those impacts and how we're going to fund those. We'll also need to look at non-union employees, which we don't have a master agreement, and we have not particularly focused on the last few years. And we are trying to look at separate categories for types of positions, since they don't have scales, and create scales for those type of positions, like a principal scale, or an administrative assistant scale, or custodian director scale, so that we have SU-wide. When we go to hire a new employee, we have something to determine those wages on, and we have consistency across the SU. These are the same things we've talked about at all the local board meetings. It's just we're now almost 5 years past the merger, and it's looking to have more unified schedules for all of our employees. Food service, we talked a little bit about the free meals. We don't know what next year's gonna look like. Anything that does happen is gonna be either at the state or local level. There's no more federal funding for that. There's been talk about that if we do continue free meals, that being now a local expense, and if that's the case, that will have an impact on the budget. We know we have those surplus funds right now in food service, so that'll help us for FY '24, but looking down the road for even further, we may need to account for that in local budgets as the further years are planned, so FY '25, FY '26. We will be going out to bid again this year for food service. We are in our 5th year, which is the maximum for food service. and that could have an impact as well on budgets. That is a long process, which will start this fall. We will need to create a committee, which will put together the bid specs, review the bid specs, and we'll just keep the board, informed as we go through the process. Summer program, Chris?
Yeah, I'll talk about those. So, and once again, this is a discussion we've had at all the local districts around summer programming. That's one of, a blessing with the additional funds is we've been able to kind of expand some of our summer programming opportunities in our schools. We know that's been difficult, obviously, with staffing, during some summers, but the issue that we see is is when this money goes away is that have we created a service or an expectation in our communities around having this summer programming for our families and what impact it may have on our budget. So, one of the things that we, I say we, Louis, Lisa, Bill, myself have started talking about is really looking at just different ways of, providing summer programming from an SU level as opposed to school-based level, which, I know that families enjoy having the summer camp model, and I'll speak very frankly. As a parent, I do find that there's a dearth of day camp options for a lot of families and summer opportunities. I think that when Senator Sanders spoke to superintendents 2 summers ago, he really felt that the schools should kind of take on a lion's share of this and really kind of be the rec departments in our communities. And here's the money for this. And part of our concern was that's not how we staff. That's not how schools are really meant to do. Well, that sounds great in theory. We also knew that when that money goes away, then what happens? And so it is something we are going to have to discuss. I think, on local districts and also from an SU standpoint, is what's the importance of summer programming, around academics. But as we look at enrichment opportunities, we look at providing, I don't want to say day camp, but more of a daycare or opportunities. What the impact of our budgets will be, but we also be very transparent with our communities that there will be this shift, and if we want to continue with this, what will be the cost, and is there an opportunity to, some districts are looking at charging, providing minimal charges to provide services, but like I said, these are discussions that we need to have. Right now, we're in a good place. We can provide a lot of these opportunities, but we know that money's going to go away, just similar to what we have the positions. And that's, I think, a lot of our concerns, that financial cliff that we're going to kind of hit in a couple of years.
So I think that would be good information for this board to have, to know what it looks like on other campuses with respect to summer programming. So like, let's say we have Tapestry. So with Tapestry, you don't really have like a breadth of summer programming, right? I mean,
there's additional programming being offered, like say in the morning with
right.
Academic, but it's a limited impact as opposed to say a school does not have Tapestry. Now you're looking to provide a full day options.
So I think, even if we're going to talk about it here, whether we're going to talk about it at local boards, like to know like what's happening at Polteny Elementary campus this past summer, they offered 10 things and they had 200 kids sign up, where Proctor High School didn't offer anything and didn't have anybody, those kind, because it's hard to know like what's happening on everybody's campus. And we say if we're going to look at it SU wide, then we have to stop and think about, okay, well, where's the focus? And, even age-wise, what, where that is. So I think that data would be helpful for this board when we're talking about it, and even at the local boards, if we decide to somehow operate in that capacity, what that would look like.
Okay, we can pull that summary information together.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
So, Louis, I'll do facilities as well. You can tack into this. So we know that with facilities, we've talked before about staffing issues. Just so we have to take a look at enrollment projections, what staffing looks like. I know Bill could talk a little bit about special ed staffing and paras and what that looks like, the impact we have with that. That's something which we always have to just take in mind and consider. We want to start to doing more long-range projections, just looking year to year, but looking to say what we might need in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, just to have a better understanding in terms of we may have like a large group of students, say, coming in, but then we see behind that, there's a drop-off, so we know that, is there a short-term way to kind of handle that without staffing, and then looking at say, okay, now we have too many, and then we look at, rifts, or, so I think these are just discussions we have to have, around this. Louis and I discussed working with our facilities directors, and our building administrators around developing, 5-year facility plans, so we have a better understanding about long-range projects. I know that, Louis and I, we have a report for Corey Valley buildings, but, Wells and Rutland Town don't have same sort of report, but just really looking to provide a better understanding from an SU-wide perspective in terms of what our facilities look like, where they're at, and what, say, 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road may look like from a cost perspective. And I know that there are all sorts of discussions around, programming, options that we shared across the SU, and we may look at facilities around that and what building could potentially hold that, what may not, but those are some good discussions that we need to have. And then the PCB testing, that is something which it's always on our mind in terms of it's the great unknown right now in terms of what impact that will have on us. We know that with the lead testing that occurred, it was a lot of times just changing out a faucet, a faucet head here or there, just shutting down or replacing a fountain. PCB may be as simple as that. It might be more drastic. So we do know that they've said it's expanded through this summer through the summer 2025. So if there are issues within our buildings, it won't be all at once, but it'll be over a slow process. But at the same time, it's our concern. What is the school like if we have to shut down a classroom or a wing or God forbid a whole school? But these are contingency plans that we have to take a look at as well. And then when you look at the cost to address these situations too, so on the back end. And we don't know what sort of financial assistance we really receive from the state with that as well, so.
Did they finish the inspection at Fulton Elementary yet? No.
Yeah. Yes, so.
Oh, you don't have the report back yet?
Yep.
And they delayed some of them too, right?
Right,
Yeah.
But I know that was the beginning one, so that'll be the guinea pig.
Right.
All right, Louis, anything else?
Yes, so our building lease for central office expires this coming June, so June 2023. So Chris and I have already started the process just to do our due diligence and look to see what other options are out there. We know one of the concerns or priorities of the board that has been expressed in the past was getting a central office that's in one of our towns, so that we're paying that rent money to a taxpayer, and our towns are benefiting from our rent. We are currently in the process of still looking for options. I think we can provide more information about that at the next board meeting. But if anybody knows about any viable properties that they would like us to look into and research, please just send the information to me and Chris. It will take a long time for us to both make decisions, but also to formulate a move and make sure that building is up and running and ready.
Right.
So the sooner, if we are going to move, then that's really something that needs to be done sooner rather than later, so that we are up and running by the end of our lease.
So, and I just want to add to that, because I know there was some discussion from some board members, there was something out of the community that, hey, we're moving, and so, as Louis said, this is part of our due diligence. We've engaged in discussions with our contractor here, and well, we're not looking to move, but I think it's one where when we come to the board and say, here's the financials, here's where we're at, and what makes most sense for us, and if staying here makes most sense for us, then that's what we look to do, whether it be short term or long term. If there is a property that would be in one of our towns that make more sense, that's then the money's going back into on the taxpayer. Like I said, we're Greater Rutland County, we're in Rutland City, where none of our towns. I mean, so it is what it is. But but like I said, it's something which we just began the process, just to kind of see what is out there. But there was not Louis and I are walking around with a blank checkbook and just trying to sign leases. I think it's one where there's a discussion where it's just to see what's out there and then to come back before the board and say, here's where, our lease is up, we'd like to continue our lease here, here's what the cost is, but here are some other options as well, and, what do we want to do, but like I said, this is, just having that in place for you, as opposed to just last minute, just kind of being reactive and saying we're signing a lease, or current lease, and, like I said, it's just important for us to do our due diligence.
So at that discussion, will we have, one, what his expectation of a lease term is, and two, what his expectation, or what he's proposing for, the increase to stay here?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the things, we have made it known that we are looking at other properties.
Okay.
And that's not, just to understand that, I think we've been good tenants here. I think, we have, I look around, there are a lot of empty spaces, so I think, it's not necessarily, it's not a bargaining chip, it's a reality. It's just, we wanna make sure that if we do re-sign our lease here, that one, it's with the board, the board's blessed and understand, but it's also under terms and dollar amount that we're all comfortable with, so.
And do you have a square footage approximation that what's your minimum, just in case by some miracle I hear of something, I can see if it's even close to what you're looking for?
Our current space is approximately 6,500 square feet.
Okay. So you'd want something close to that with all the office space, not
It
just one
depends on
empty
how it's laid
warehouse,
out.
for example.
The layout.
Well, I think,
Yeah, the layout matters too, right, but,
But one of the things you also have to consider too is when you look at an empty warehouse, and as someone who went through this in New Jersey where I relocated a school and, it's one thing to purchase price, but then also the hidden cost of, of retrofitting a
Right,
warehouse
right.
space and this, that, I mean, the
Sprinkler
cost can be
systems
just
and fire alarms,
astronomical,
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
tough pill to swallow, particularly as we're looking through, some other budgetary considerations as well,
Right.
so I know that, like I said, we walked in one space, it was an empty warehouse, I'm like, okay, this is great, but what's the cost gonna be just to get this to where we need to be, and is it gonna be really worth that, and for what? So like,
you're looking to probably lease
yes,
something, not purchase something.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Well, SU can't own property,
Right.
correct.
so that was a conversation before, if,
Right, yeah.
if a district owned property and rented to the SU
Yeah,
or something,
right,
but an
right.
SU can't legally own property. So, and so 6,500 square feet, we have a lot of dead space though here that we don't use too. So, I mean,
Well, like, I think Mike, you said it's, or somebody over there said it's about
The
the
layout,
setup to
yeah.
the layout of how whatever the space might be.
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I just,
yeah,
I think in the past year and a half, we've reorganized here a little bit to try to use our space a little more efficiently and moving some people around. I know that, I'll just say that, the superintendent's office, to put in a desk in a parking lot and, it made no sense to have 4 people crammed in one space and shift people around and move to a smaller space. We did talk about this space, and if there was ever a point in time where, it is utilized for meetings, particularly tonight, right, but I think that's just, that layout would be, we do the best with the space that we can, but.
all right, Louis, anything else?
Well, that just brings us to the final point, just any, guidelines that the board or priorities the board wants to see in that first draft before we put it together. If we'll take any feedback you have now at this point. If there is no feedback tonight, then we'll just do our best to put together the best budget we can and present that at the next meeting, and, we can go from there.
Thoughts, comments, suggestions?
I think you already talked about what I would like is in doing, maybe a little mini presentation about central office needs or where you see those, whether staffing or other kinds of needs, and then, just the justification for those, just like we ask, you know, building administrators to do too. Just highlight those, and just like you're writing a grant, you have to justify why you want the money and why this is the way to spend it, et cetera. So, that's more my concern, so I can see your thinking better.
I see it coming, Eric. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Good, it's going.
So the only thing that comes to mind, and I understand this work is already being done, but the only thing I can think of is this around curriculum and you know, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind in the budget is, you know, what we have and what we're using, and you know, aligning that with the other districts, and I think that's important to at least consider.
Okay. Anybody else? Tina?
I mean, we had our board retreat last night and talked about some goals, so just, I guess, keeping that in mind with the budget drafts in general would be helpful.
I guess I would like to not see increasing staff at central office. I feel like, it'll be interesting to see when we see the PowerPoint, but I feel like we have built out a great deal at central office, not just in ESSER funded positions, but in other positions. So I would like to see, there not be additional staff requests coming.
And I guess with that, maybe, you know, if shifting of some staff responsibilities has to be done in order to not increase
Right.
positions, then descriptions of that, like, well, okay, this person's doing this, these are their responsibilities, but if we get creative and do this and this, not giving them 2 jobs, but how do
Right.
we shift something to make it, you know, which I'm sure you're all thinking about all the time, but then maybe we need new job descriptions, so that person knows on paper, you know, and then if we, you know, unfortunately lose someone, then we have a job description that's current for hiring someone else, so. I don't know what that is. It's not- Anyway, so that would be my request, is if, you know, if we do have to do shifting, to sort of have an idea of what that position would be in descriptive form.
Okay.
Okay, I guess that's it.
All right, thank you.
Louis, I actually had a question about the monthly reports. I think we skipped that bullet point. Are you going to cover that, or?
I don't have anything to share about the monthly report, but if there's questions, I can try to answer those.
I just had a quick question. On page 2 of the expenditure report for special ed, in professional,
What are you on, warrants?
on,
The expenditure,
no, I'm on expenditure report for special ed.
which is in this.
Oh, in that,
Yeah.
okay.
There's 2 lines for professional services, which I know I've been asking you a million questions lately, so I just figured, I only had one question tonight. There's 2, so I was just wondering why, and then, the second one is already overspent with our outstanding encumbrance, and I was just wondering, I figured you had a good explanation, so I wanted to know what was going on.
So typically, if we know about the expenses in advance, appeal will be done at the beginning of the year. So if we have, if we know we have 5 students attending a certain program, or we know about an expense where we're contracting for 5 contractors, and we know those expenses, then we'll do the PO at the beginning of the year for those expenses, and then we'll work down those POs. So if we do a PO for 50,000, and then each month we get an invoice for 5,000, then that'll come off the PO. So looking at those 2 lines, the first line I believe is for Kelly Services, which we're not using anymore. So that funds will actually go towards our in-house sub program. And then the second line would be for professional services where we're paying other vendors other than Kelly Services. So whether it be outside SLPs, PTs, OTs, any psychologists, any other professional services that we may be paying related to instruction.
So,
Without having the actual POs in front of me, I don't know what specifically those are for. If you wanna hold on a few minutes, I could just run a report and get some more details.
well, it just seems like a big amount to already be in the hole at the beginning of the year. That's
But if it's encumbered, it just means they're holding it.
right. So
Does that
it,
answer your question?
so it could change and get better as the year goes on. It's not when it's when it's outstanding encumbrance. That's
Right.
not an actual number. That's a possible number.
What page are you on?
Can you
I'm on
say it-
page
can you
2.
say it again, please?
So on page 2, professional services, it says that the unencumbered balance is already negative $60,000. So I was trying to figure out why the outstanding encumbrance is about 60,000 more than we projected, and when we're already only in August. Like, this is from July. So I was just trying to figure out why it was so different than what we anticipated at the beginning of the year, or the fiscal year.
Well, we set our budget many months in advance, not knowing the student population at the time. So that's one of the reasons why there could be a significant variance. I am running a report just to see what those POs are for.
I guess I thought that when you wrote something in the outstanding encumbrance, that was like a final answer, like we are going to meet that at some point. Is that, so what you're saying is it's what we think we might meet, but it's still not what we might meet, and it could come down.
Correct, so the encumbrances are created when we create POs. So, I mean, to give an easy example, I mean, if we think we're gonna spend $5,000 at Amazon on supplies, we'll do a PO for $5,000. We may end up spending $4,000, we may end up spending $6,000 when we actually get those invoices. The PO is just an estimate. Now, for this type of work, the PO is usually done based on maybe a contract or some sort of agreement or some expectation of a cost. So just looking at the details, I mean, I see that there looks to be about $42,000 for Rutland Mental Health, that was created in July. And then also in July, there was a significant amount of POs done for something called Applied ABC. I'm not sure what that is, I'd have to look into it. And then there's another $40,000 of Rutland Mental Health again at the end of July. But the big one is that Applied ABC, there looks to be about 130 something thousand. And like I said, I'm not sure what that is, I'd have to look into it.
It's hiring behavior interventionists for high need students. It's DCBAs.
So that wasn't in the budget?
I didn't create the budget, so I
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, that should have been budgeted, I mean, if it, I'm not sure how to answer that question, cause I didn't write the budget, but you probably would've, should've, I'm not sure the students moved in. If you pass your budget maybe in January and the students moved in March or April, that might be unbudgeted. So that would be the reason it would be unbudgeted, but
So-
otherwise it shouldn't have budgeted.
We did have some money in ESSER earmarked for behavior interventionists, but, that's something that we can look at and see, if potentially that money could also be applied to the ESSER funds that we have earmarked. I can get with Bill and Chris and we can give an update on that at the next meeting.
That would be great, thank you.
All right, anything else, Louis?
That's all I have for tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lois.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. A motion will be in order to approve the July 27th SU meeting minutes.
Oh, I actually had a question about
Okay.
it though. Are we supposed to list what were salaries and things in this minutes? I thought that we weren't.
No, as far as I know, we weren't. Oh, they all are in
The
there.
salaries, why not? Those are public. They're in your
No,
town
I was told,
reports.
I was told,
That we
not
didn't
to.
have to, right.
I didn't know if we weren't supposed to, or if it was a choice, or what. I wasn't sure what the answer was.
So they've been listed all right along. This is a,
They haven't in ours, cause
In the
I don't think-
separate board meetings.
oh, well, they're listed in the town reports.
Right.
They're-
I
they're
know, that's why I
public.
didn't think it was a big deal, but I wasn't sure. But, you know, some of them aren't, I don't think, like support staff hourlies, I don't think those are. I think teachers are, I think-
Contracted.
I think salary positions are, but I don't think the hourly ones are.
Right, cause I think the reason they do that is because they're contracted.
Right.
The
Every,
hourly's
anyone
not.
that's our employee their salary is listed in the town report. That is a public document. Everyone's salary is in, Quarry Valley,
Bo has done it too, pre-merger.
yeah.
Well, Rutland Town has also, but I'm just saying for the minutes themselves. When we've gone through it, we've gone through and just put that we
Just their
approve
names, yeah.
and their names, but we don't necessarily put in the amounts.
We have done that.
I'm okay either way. I
Right.
just wanted to know that we are all doing it the same
Right,
way.
yeah.
So that's what we're doing in Quarry Valley.
Okay.
That's what we've done here.
So there's no reason not to,
No.
for anybody.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they're.
Once it lays on your desk, it's a public document when we look at it during the meeting, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's wasn't it. It was just whether it was necessary or not.
I don't know, I mean, it's like then the union has a fit, like if I don't read them out loud
Right.
in a meeting, so I guess I type the minutes, so when I do it, there's like 100% transparency. Because one meeting we sat here, I didn't read something out loud, the next thing you know, the union's texting, I need to read it out loud, so.
Thank you.
All right, motion by Mike, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, approval of the warrants. Actually, you received warrants in your email today.
Yep.
So questions should have been directed to Louis. A motion would be in order to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Superintendent's report, Chris.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Excuse me. With about a week left before school starts, we're busy just getting buildings ready to go, finish up staffing needs. I know Bill's been working hard with his team and make sure that we have sufficient staffing and paraprofessionals in place. I know that today I had an opportunity to begin the day at our new teacher orientation, so it was kind of nice to see some of the new faces, see people who just decided to be a part of it, so it was good to see it, and had a little bit of energy to them, so it was nice to see, because I think, the past couple of years, people look a little worn down a little bit, so it's nice, to see people fresh, and rejuvenated, ready to go, so, I think that's our goal is, between now and the end of this week, I'm gonna get around every single building, just get the administrators, just check to see where we're at, but they said the buildings look great. Those I've been in, I think our, custodial staffs, our front office staff, our administrators, and, the staff who've been in, are doing a nice job getting the buildings ready, so I think we're ready to go. Summer has flown by, but typically does, so it's the way it is. I have listed, once again, just for your, information, just Pcb testing, just,
Thank you for that.
yeah, it's just so you can kind of see where we're at and, who's coming up and all that, schools, like I said, just, completed theirs, waiting for results. And you see that, Proctor, High School's, next up, so once we have results, we will, provide those both at the local as well as the SU level, just so we can have a better understanding of what the impacts may be and, have discussions around that, so. I did discuss, the admin retreats, at our local levels, so with each of you, so, like I said, I think our admins so they're ready to go, have the buildings all set. We have, a couple more admin retreats, just kind of touch base on a couple more things before the start of the school year. Teachers come in next week, for a couple days of orientation, so like I said, we're We're ready to go. I think it's, we're looking forward to a great school year. Like I said to the teachers, it's kind of nice, to really, have discussions around kids and around student learning and kind of get back to where we were. We do understand that COVID will still be present, but that's just the reality. But we're going to continue moving forward and do what we do. And like I said, our staff will do a great job of providing our students with good education. So we're looking forward to a great school year. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Could I ask, the COVID, do we have the test still in the schools if,
We have probably close to 3,000 tests behind those doors.
Okay.
We still have a large number of tests available, like if families would want them, they could just reach out to their school nurse, building administrator, they're always available, so.
great, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, Assistant Superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. You have my written report, and if you have a copy of it with you or online, I wanted to focus on the second page. I know I don't usually ever have a second page, but I try hard to keep it to one page for you. But in this case, I have our curriculum week summary, and I wanted to share with you the progress that we've been able to make and the plans for our next step. So in the elementary area, our goal was completion of ELA and math. And for K-6, we were able to draft all of those documents during our summer curriculum week. We also, in addition, were able to get some preliminary drafts of 1st through 5th grade science done. And for social studies, we got both grade K and grade 6 started, which was a great thing to be able to move into those areas. For 7 through 12 core courses, our goal was completion of all of them. We were able to complete them in ELA and math. We have 9 through 12 courses drafted for science. 7 through 8 are in progress. I think they're going to be done before the beginning of the school year. And in social studies, we were able to get 7 and 8 drafted, and not high school. We did not move into any of the electives in those areas in a significant way. So we used the staff that we had and focused them on the cores that we could based on their areas of expertise, and made progress in those areas. Beyond those 2 goal areas, we also have some additional areas that we were able to make significant progress in the area of art. All of our courses and electives have been drafted. And in the area of the music, K through 8 and ensemble courses have been drafted. And so we still have to begin world language, PE, and health in those areas. Just a huge thank you to the teachers who joined us in that work this summer. It was a really intense week. There was a lot of chocolate eating in the afternoons to keep brain power going. But they persisted. They worked hard. They collaborated exceptionally well to norm and to calibrate their work across courses and grade levels. We really just had a great, dedicated group of folks who worked with great effort to get to that point. So a huge thank you to them. We were also, this isn't in my report, but I was able to also work with Proctor High School. They had done some curriculum work with the Partnership for Literacy and Learning this spring, and we've been able to compare the curriculum work that we have created and what they've created, and we have I think a pretty simple path forward to align that work. It's not going to require a huge amount of revision on either end. So that was an exciting conversation and breakthrough to get to this summer as well. So our plan, with your permission and approval, is to try to, we're going to share all of this at in-service with everyone. So we have in-service sessions already scheduled, documents are up on websites, Jump Rope is being programmed with course plans that are aligned to the priority indicators. All of those pieces are set and ready to go as we had discussed. And then we want to try to pull a cross-section of teachers to complete drafts for the areas that are unfinished and then share those drafts back with their colleagues. And we know, and you had all shared your feedback, that it was really important to you that there was representation from across our districts in the creation of these documents. But we also want to have the minimum amount of impact on student instructional time and learning that we possibly can. So our goals are to try to take one teacher from Rutland Town, one from Corey Valley, and one from Wells Springs to do a single work day collectively to draft documents in a targeted area, and then have them share those back with their PLC groups during in-service, and any time that we have available for them to meet and to refine those documents and make them better. We feel like that's the way that we can assure that we have real representation, and also try to minimize the impact on students. We have dates tentatively scheduled. We've reached out to principals about individuals to represent their districts on those days. And right now it's looking like we could, between the end of September, I'm gonna give everybody a minute to get settled in their classrooms, right? So between the end of September and the beginning of November, we believe that we can complete all of those drafts with that kind of format to do the work. I'm gonna just pause there for 1 minute before I go to my last bullet to gather any thoughts or feedback from folks on that piece.
So end of September to 1st of November, you're gonna finish all this. So how many times you're pulling every week, every day?
No, each group would be pulled for 1 day. So like, say, you've got a K2 social studies group. Those 3 teachers would be pulled 1 day to work on these documents. We believe that we can get them through the majority of these documents in 1 day. So each teacher, I'll say, that would be part of this process would only miss a single day to be able to create the missing documents in this product.
How is our setup for hiring of substitutes? Because we don't have Kelly Services anymore. Have we got a lot of interest?
So,
Lewis is leading that initiative. He's
Oh, I'm sorry, that was
that's
bad
okay,
of
so,
me.
Yeah.
no, I can talk a little about that. I know that, Ellen, who has taken on this role, has over 30 years of HR experience, so she's, taken a very proactive role in trying to do recruitment. I know that she, was at the Vermont State Fair at a booth, passing out pamphlets, and I think that, last we have a healthy, pool of candidates. I think that all the candidates that we had at Kelly's, we were able to retain them and move forward, having those same individuals. Always the concern is, there'll be an ebb and flow, so, I mean, we know that just with the reality of school, that if we have a good number of individuals out on a daily basis, it's gonna be very, very difficult to cover. We have 4 out in one building, 4 out in another. We just have to take a look at it. And so that's also where, with these workday, we may have to pause and say, look, we just can't do it today because we just don't have the coverage of this. So we may have something scheduled, so we need to hold off on this reschedule because of just coverage of that. But, like I said, our goal is to try to continue to recruit substitutes, but it's difficult because hopefully with things kind of change a little bit and people start to feel more and more comfortable being back in schools, or we'll start to see more individuals. And we are seeing individuals who are saying, I'll help out in this school or help out in this school, which we can do. It's a little bit easier for us to do than was through Kelly Services.
Thank
Setting
you.
those dates early, we set those dates as a draft, a tentative schedule, as basically as soon as we debriefed curriculum week and looked at what was missing from that work. And we sent them to the principals and asked them to share them with their administrative assistants and get them into frontline as quickly as possible. So, because the earlier we can post, the more likely we are to be able to fill the spots. So they've already had those dates for almost a month, which gives us the best window possible to try and fill them in advance. But like Chris said, is right, if you've got 2 out of 3 teachers don't have coverage in their buildings, we're just gonna have to pick a different day.
Thank you for pushing through and getting a lot of this work done before the school year started. I think that's great. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I really like how you can capture real-time feedback from any teacher in the GRCSU. I think that's so helpful. Just like we were saying about, trying to go across SU to get information, this enables anyone to give their opinion as to what's working, what's not. So I think it's really helpful. I'm really glad you set it up that way.
Thanks.
I just had a question about when all this work is done, will there be like a comparison or an alignment with, in regards to like other, secondary schools, particularly like, you know, schools that, outside of, like Wellsprings, we send all of our kids to other schools, so, you know, this, they have the option, they could go to Poultney, but they can go to other schools, so is there, will there be like any kind of, look into that curriculum, and not necessarily private schools, I would say, but,
Well, I think I know that's a concern. I think what we have to right now primarily look at is we're operating under the mindset that we have a pre-K through 12, you know, continuum, and that we're building through that. And as someone who's operating like you know, feeder schools and you know, going, it is difficult to try to then develop different curriculum that's going to satisfy, say, Mill River or Granville or Rutland City. And I think those are considerations, but I think what our goal would be to develop a curriculum that, regardless of where they go, that they would be able to be successful. I mean, that's something which we, you know, we can collect feedback moving forward from counselors in terms of preparedness as our students matriculate into the system. And I think that's something we talk about, you know, with, you know, we'd always like to do it with the high school students when they graduate, they go off in the world, but that's very difficult to collect data. While, say, if our sixth grader or say eighth grader from Rutland Town goes off, it's a little easier for us to potentially collect some data just to see how well we're doing and what that may look like. But to try to align curriculum with a variety of other schools, it's very complicated.
that's kind of what I was getting at. I wasn't sure, you know, not to match curriculum. I know that's like probably impossible, but you know, that's why I use the word comparison to.
Well, and I think using the, you know, we're Common Core in Vermont, and so that for English and math, and that is very helpful because all of the schools in the state are using the same standards and the same expectations for the Common Core for literacy and math, and and also for C3 for social studies, and they're using the next generation science standards. So any of the schools that are serving Vermont students on a regular basis are going to see the same curriculum standards represented in every Vermont school. So in that regard, our curriculum are already pretty aligned across programs because everybody's on the same page with that regard. Big picture, not nuanced details, but overall. And we also do, you know, our SBAC data, our assessment data, also lets us look at our curriculum and analyze the effectiveness of different areas of the curriculum and make sure that our students are performing in each of those areas. So, you know, as Chris says, we want them prepared and ready to go no matter where they are. And if they're doing well in our curriculum and they're doing well in our assessments, we can have a pretty high degree of confidence that they'll be able to succeed.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for all the work you and
You
teachers
did
have done
well.
on this.
Yeah, I was so impressed with the folks who were there. And Tina was referencing my third bullet, which was just that these are, you know, obviously we know and we discuss that having one or two teachers draft a document like this is a great start, but that we want more brains approaching these conversations about teaching and learning and making those decisions. So they will be working in our affinity groups during our in-service time available to them this year. To be able to continue these curriculum conversations and prioritizing reviews of these working drafts. But as Tina mentioned, we also have, they're all live, they're in Google Docs. So we have commenting turned on to every one of these. The teachers are the only ones who can see the unpacked versions at this point. The families and anybody else could see the big picture priority indicators, but the teachers are the only ones who can drill to that next level of detail. And they can access these working drafts and can put comments right in the live document. So as they're teaching it, or if they have a chance to sit down and read through it, if they have comments, ideas, suggestions, they can just put them in the document, and then when the grade level group or the content area group meets, they can go through and look at the comments that have been put into those documents and try and incorporate that into the feedback to refine them and improve them. So we're gonna look at that working draft model and try and keep these things rolling throughout the year. Again, our goal is to have, you know, working drafts of as much as humanly possible that have been reviewed by groups, ready to go for the second half of the year. There are a lot of documents, so, and for different grade levels, there are even more. So for example, if you are a third grade teacher, you might have 15 documents in literacy and 15 documents in social studies and 12 documents in science and 11 documents in social studies. That's a lot of documents for a group of people to review collectively together and have the time to go through during the year. So we're gonna have to continue that same level of prioritization and really getting people for right now to focus on, at the elementary levels, literacy and math, and at the secondary levels, focusing on their core courses for the time being, so that we can spend as much energy as possible in really making high quality products in those areas before we move on to the other 20 documents that they might have to look at for electives or non-core classes. So we're just gonna keep trying to keep those focus areas that you guys had set for us in that work.
Will you give us an update in November?
Yep. Hope to.
With that update, is there anything like tangible we'd be able to see at that point? Or as far as kind of what families would end up seeing, or what the drafts that the teachers are seeing, just anything of substance that I can sort of wrap my head around a little bit?
Sure. We did share out samples of what they look like at the May or June board meeting. We created some unpacked indicator documents for you guys to review, and I presented them here, I think, at that time. So I could easily reshare that with you, because they're very representative of the kind of documents that were created by the teachers. And then, we could bring samples at any time that the board would like. We have, again, they're all digitally linked, so with our access level, we could share anything.
I think it would be helpful for the board to see what parents are seeing. You showing us sometimes what teachers are seeing is not helpful, because then when residents come up to us, that's not what they're seeing. So we need to know what they have access to, what they can see, and how they're getting access to it also.
Yeah. That's all live on the academics tab of the GRCSU website. You can see the table of contents for all the priority indicators, and you can access every priority indicator document for every core course, every grade level, every elective. It's all live right now on the website, and anybody can look at those documents, and that's exactly what the public can see.
Okay, and how would people know that they were live on there? Does it say it on the homepage?
I don't know if it does, honestly.
No,
Yeah.
we can talk to our Bill Evans about sharing that out.
Okay.
With, welcome back or first
Yeah.
newsletters.
For conferences or parent-teacher conferences at the beginning of the year.
And we
too.
can also
Just a good
have
time.
Shannon put like a little tab at the top. Yeah,
Interesting.
but someone have to go to the website first to see that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think information like that is great that it's there, but if nobody knows it's there, no one's hunting pecking on those websites, because they're not really, first of all, they're obsolete almost on your phone to use. So I think that's why it's important to, if it's on there, to have it highlighted someplace. Anything else? All right, while we're here, Bill, did you want to share anything as we're under consent agenda? Introduce yourself to the
I
world.
can introduce myself and share a little bit. I was
Okay.
going to, I'm Bill Basic, the new Director of Student Services, and maybe I'll send you out, I wasn't sure if we were going to report stuff, but I can maybe send the board out what I sent to the teachers. It gives a larger introduction of my background and such about my history, for those of you who don't know. So maybe I'll share that out with the board tomorrow, so I don't have to go through my whole resume tonight.
Okay.
But I do want to make a few remarks that I did start the year early, that I did a large listening tour throughout the district in the months of April and May, and was very pleased to see pockets of excellence throughout the district, and identify some challenges that we're certainly going to have to take a look at, and I think we're going to, I'll do more of a presentation on the challenges at the board retreat coming up in September. But there's a lot of societal changes that we were discussing tonight, that special ed, there's 73 coming down the road, which are going to have financial implications. And then we also have just a general rise in social emotional needs throughout the nation right now that we'll be looking at. So I'll have more of those challenges for you in the retreat in September. But overall, I'm very pleased. I'm happy. I do want to give a kind of little shout out to Tiffany Patterson and Katie Loomis. They've done an excellent job with the coordinator positions and what we've set up. Really feel they've gone above and beyond with their summer work. So I did want to publicly thank them. But overall, I'm excited to be here and embrace the special education and embrace the challenges.
Great, thank you.
Real quick, Bill, did you want to talk a little about staffing? Since I know that one,
Oh, we're going to jump right into the challenges?
Yeah.
I think it's one where when we left in June, there was a bit of doom and gloom in terms of.
There was doom and gloom.
But I
We've-
think,
Yeah, I'll just update you. So we're doing really well. We worked really hard. We had 6 teachers to fill. We've interviewed. I feel like all we've done is interviewed every day. I want to thank the people from the boards who've been in on those interviews. It's been great help. But we have 5 of the 6 filled right now for our teachers. Para's been a little more challenging. We're getting there with our paraprofessionals. We will not be fully staffed by the beginning of the school year, but we feel that with movement, will be highly functional for the beginning of the school year. And paras are something that generally come and go throughout the school year, so we would hope to get those up to full staffing at some point. But overall, we were just super pleased, and that's why I was putting a shout out to Katie and Tiffany, who did a lot of interviewing this summer, to be able to start the whole district down 1 special educator, which we hope to fill within the next couple weeks, is a big feat.
Absolutely. Definitely
Okay.
better than it was.
All right.
Lisa, before you move on, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just had 2 other quick items that I just wanted to cover, so I'm gonna sneak back
Okay.
around. One is habits of work. We had talked about that in the spring, that we didn't think that we were going to get to a unified place with habits of work. We just hadn't had, honestly, the bandwidth to really focus on that with all the other curriculum work that we were doing. We felt like content was first, and we would work on other things as we went. But when we started going through Jump Rope and looking at setting it up for this year, we had to pull everyone's habits of work from the schools from last year so that we could roll them over. And when we did that and we put them all in one big list, it really didn't look that very different from each other. And so most of the schools had 3 general areas that were pretty much the same across the board. There were 2 other schools that had beyond, and this is at the elementary level, I should say, there were 2 other schools that had kind of different takes that they were using for habits of work, whether it was a 4th indicator or a just different category. We met with them individually and talked to them about, you know, here's where most people are at. You guys have this. Tell us about how this has worked in your building. You know, what do you really think? And in both of those cases, the administrators who we met with said, I don't really think that's that big a deal. I think that you should just go with one set and get everybody on the same page at the elementary level and move them forward. So we convened our admin team and shared that back to them and shared the list of habits of work with them. And they came to the same conclusion. Honestly, Chris, it was like record time. I don't think they've ever agreed on anything quite as quickly. It was like 30 seconds, and they were like, "Yeah, that sounds fine. Go." And they're actually identical from elementary to Corey Valley, except that Corey Valley has 1 more. They have 1 additional component. Corey Valley had already sent out information to their athletes about eligibility. They've started, you know, practices already. Like, they're already rolling. So they felt at this time like we're not changing information that's already gone out to kids and families about athletic participation. It's too late. You missed the boat. Come back. But we're willing to work with you for next year and make a change. But the 3 indicators that the elementary folks were using and chose to support again were also 3 of the indicators, 3 out of the 4 indicators on the Corey Valley habits of work, which we thought was amazing for unification. So they're engagement/participation, preparedness, and responsibility. And everybody across the board was really supportive of that. So I must admit to you, I was surprised. I did not think we were going to get there this summer or that quickly. It was not, I thought we were gonna have to spend some more time and really, people get very, attached to how they talk about students over time. So with your blessing, we're gonna move forward with that and get our elementary schools on a set of habits of work and keep Corey Valley on another set for this year that's very, very close. And then we're gonna try and just get everybody together to make a draft for next year that is unified and ready to go, if that sounds amenable to you. I think the larger conversation that we need to have about habits of work is that we have these things called habits of work. The state of Vermont has these things called transferable skills, right? And then a lot of our content documents have things like dispositions of learning or other, student as learner in a literacy classroom kind of expectations that they have. So, and Chris is going to talk about our portrait of a graduate competencies. So we have these pieces out here, and we really need to have a single approach that blends and marries these things and makes it simple for students and families and teachers to assess and share progress on those areas. So we can get to a simple set of habits of work now, but we really do need to have a bigger conversation over time about when we have these competencies for portrait of graduate, when we have these transferable skills, which we, in the education quality standards, should be reporting out on according to the Agency of Education, and then like, how does that fit? Habits of work are honestly, they all fit within the transferable skills, but it's not a comprehensive set of transferable skills and blah, blah. I can give you a nice picture presentation of it sometime, just letting you know that like there's more conversation down the line about how we pull all these things together in the future. But for now, we're pretty excited. I hope that you are excited too. But if anybody has any questions, concerns, or feedback about that habit of work process and where we're at with it right now, please tell me now.
Well, with respect to Corey Valley, I think we'd had significant discussions, particularly with our upper school, and had that at the board level. So I'm a little perplexed about going back and re-examining that. Those were some pretty intense conversations at our board level. So I don't know, I guess I'm piqued why you would be going back and readjusting those. We've had those, we put those in our athletic handbook. They're working for us.
Yep.
People are understanding what they are and how they're being assessed. I think most of the problem is that we change these things constantly, and so then it's not that people don't understand, it's we're constantly changing what it is. So what would necessitate the change for that?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, listening to you, the one you took out then was attitude.
Well, we didn't take it out, but it was not represented in the current habits of work at the elementary schools. So it was represented in Corey Valley, but it was not represented in the habits of work that other schools were currently scoring students on. So we just didn't put it in elementary school because it wasn't there before. So that is the only area of difference. The other three are identical. So they fit pretty nicely together. So our only goal in doing this again is trying to get everybody on the same page. So eventually it would be nice for all of our schools to have all of their habits of work the same and aligned and the same rubrics and the same expectations for everybody, for a lot of different reasons, right? So that's our goal, is to get there. We got, last year we had different teachers within different schools grading on different habits of work in different elementary schools. So in some, because it was not even uniform at the school level in some of our schools. So this would be a huge step forward for getting everybody much more consistent and cohesive about how they're assessing students in this area.
So the only thing I'm hearing then is the change would be in adding Rutland Town when you're talking about middle high school, because Corey Valley's all on the same page.
Yeah.
And Wells Springs is only going to 6th grade, so they're not part of the conversation. So it's,
So just to clarify, all of our schools have habits of work.
I understand that,
They're
but
just not related to athletic eligibility at the elementary level.
Right.
Yeah.
So that,
Rutland Town is, but they're fine with these. over
okay.
there. Yep.
So really, there's not a huge need to go back and reassess those at Quarry Valley for athletic. I mean, with all of the projects we have going on,
Well, that's why we didn't take it on.
well,
Yeah.
I'm even saying next year, I guess I'm confused how this
Yeah.
is cream rising to the top. I mean, it seems to me that, as I said prior, this was a pretty intense discussion in Quarry Valley. Chris was there, he was part of that discussion in a prior position when we made those and lined that out. So I'm perplexed why it's moving to the SU level to reassess what we have made as a decision in a district that is, the only district with high schools.
Right. And I'm not even saying that the elementary and high school have to be the same. I'm not putting forward that proposal. I'm just saying organically, this sort of happened when we looked at the indicators that were in there and realized that what the elementary teachers were scoring on was very much already unified. You know, some people had prepared versus preparedness or responsible versus responsibility, but there was not very large language changes at all. Which we did not expect that it was going to be so close already, which made us think like, wow, maybe we can just get to a place where at least the elementary schools are on the same place, and then you've got Quarry Valley in the same place, and like, that's great compared to where we started with everybody doing all kinds of different things. I don't think any of the other boards have had conversations like that in that depth about habits of work. And that makes sense because they're not, with the athletic eligibility at the high school level, it adds a whole nother level of significance to those conversations.
I would like to just see, where we have our elementary and then we keep the secondary and we look to just maintain that moving forward. I think it's, you know.
Well, and that's what
Yeah,
we're proposing
right.
for next year.
She was just
Right.
talking
Well,
about
just say-
elementary school.
No,
though,
she
right?
said she was gonna reexamine
Yeah.
it.
Just elementary school though,
No,
right?
no, that she said she was going to reexamine and look at Quarry Valley in the upcoming year, that she was asking us to approve it for this year, and then would look at it for the upcoming.
For Quarry Valley Elementary Schools though, right?
Our-
Is what-
Or this would be for Quarry Valley Elementary Schools. Quarry Valley 7-12 would keep their rubric, keep their habits of work, keep everything as has been and is.
And that's what I'm asking, but she said she would they would open and reexamine 7 through 12. So I'm just asking why we need to look at that and why that can't just remain the same.
To me, let me just clarify there. I'm not just saying we'd look at changing 7-12. What we'd like to do eventually is just get everyone on the same page. And if we have conversations with folks and they feel like 7-12 is different, we need a separate rubric, we need a separate set of indicators, I support that wholeheartedly. It feels like, you know, from what you're saying, that Quarry Valley is pretty supportive of that. We didn't even really have that conversation in any depth. It was really, wow, elementary's really close. Quarry Valley wants to keep doing what they're doing. Can we do that for next year? And then just continue talking about, is there ever a time where we could get everybody on the same page?
So, my recommendation would be, that we have an elementary set and we have a secondary set. And because I think,
We would have.
I do think there are differences between, you know, expectations of say a freshman or sophomore than there are first or second grade, and and I understanding the work that needs to be done and with our curriculum around common assessments. I think that's, if we have something which is working, what people are understanding, I think we just maintain this for the immediate future, and if there's a need for us to revisit it somewhere down the road, then we can visit it somewhere down the road. But I think that, you know, I think we've done a lot of work on just kind of the alignment of the elementary schools across the SU.
Huge.
Secondary has something which they spent a lot of time at the Quarry Valley around
great.
and keeping that in place, and then, you know, shifting our energies to other things would be my recommendation.
Rutland Town 7 and 8, are they pretty much the same place Quarry Valley is?
Rutland Town was looking at following the elementary expectations for next year.
Aren't
They
they-
felt like
Aren't they
that
quite a
was-
bit different between elementary and 7-8?
No, they're not really. There was an extra element that was assessed at Rutland Town. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But when they looked at these descriptions the way that they were, they felt like it could capture everything that they wanted to report on students, and they weren't concerned about that at that
Are you
that point in
concerned?
time. No. I think, teachers the goal of having habits of work reported out at the elementary level is for teachers to be communicating with families on a regular basis around how is my student doing in class, not just the academic part. How are they doing? Are they doing the work? Are they engaged? Are they prepared? Are they respectful and responsible citizens in the community, right? That's the goal, is to communicate that information for families. And I
Right.
do feel like having the same 3 from the Corey Valley rubric applicable to elementary school, that's gonna give teachers and families and students the ability to communicate about that
Which
on a
is
regular
great,
basis.
but my concern right now is Rutland Town, 7th and 8th.
Right.
And coming off of COVID and the mess that these students have gone through emotionally and everything else, and that's a big concern. These kids are the ones that have kind of lived COVID, so they don't have everything they needed in order to grow. So my concern is, and I have no idea, my concern is that if Rutland Town is treating 7th and 8th as they do kindergarten up, are they actually getting that additional that they need as 7th and 8th graders? That's my question to you. Is there something else that should be, I know they're comfortable where they are and they say it fits. I want to make sure it does fit, that they're not going through the same as K through 6,
Yeah.
that they
And-
really are different animals.
Yes, and I think what you're getting at is, what are teachers looking for to give a student a score in responsibility that says they're doing a good job?
Right, it's
right?
kind of like a
And that
catch-all.
changes, that does, of
Right.
course, those expectations change. If a kindergartner, loses their paper, that's one level of expectation for them around organization
Right.
skills, and you're gonna teach that. If an 8th grader is consistently losing and missing things, then that's an organizational problem, and it needs to be communicated and addressed to everybody involved in that kid. So, yes, exactly what is expected of students as they go through changes, but the title is still responsibility, if that makes sense.
Okay, I
I
just
think
want to make sure.
I think they were actually excited to have consistency because there had been kind of different habits of work at different grade levels in the building.
Mhm.
And so this would actually give them a school-wide approach to having more consistency from classroom to classroom, which we had gotten a lot of feedback from families about in the whole jump rope conversation, was like, we want it to be more unified and more consistent.
It's just that the last couple of years, especially 7th, 8th, at Rutland Town, I'm not putting anybody else in the same bucket, have been having a very hard time. So, I mean, some of our students aren't being the citizens that they should be. So I want to make sure that we're catching that and working on that.
Yep.
To make sure we, promote the best people we can to live in this circumstance, that's all.
I appreciate this work. It sounds important. I would just say that, I would, at least like to, learn more about, I'd never heard of habits of work until you mentioned it. We never talked about it, so, at least, in the capacity of at least understanding what you're talking about and how and what it applies to, so, maybe, you could always send me something in an email, or we can, outside of a meeting, that'd be great, but other than that, I think it's, sounds good.
What did you need from us tonight, anything?
Just if there's any, I think I didn't hear anyone objecting to having an elementary set and a Corey Valley set, for this year. And then I think, Chris's comment about, and Lisa's comments about the amount of work that's gone into the Corey Valley set, that seems pretty significant. That has not been the case at the elementary level, so that seems to be where the focus of the work should be next.
Great, thank you.
Whatever priority that we need it to be. And then just the last thing, I'd included a few, I think not the last meeting, but the meeting before. The board had requested a list of interventionists who are currently employed by the district and how they're funded. So that's in your packet. Louis and I co-created this chart and just wanted to respond to that request and have that information available to the board. There wasn't any charge or action or recommendation associated with it. It's just informational until and unless you request something else.
I would suggest board members bring this to the September meeting. This is
Wrote
going
it
to
on
be,
top.
beneficial for budget discussion. All right,
Thank you, Lisa.
all right, moving on to personnel. You have before you contract recommendations, professional staff, Lori Patterson, Patricia Swain, Alicia Aldis, Ashley Siemens, Heidi Brothers. We are including her in the contract recommendations, and in the next batch, we're going to accept her resignation. So I just want to point that out. And Linda Nelson. Any questions about the professional staff? Support staff, Erica Washburn, Rachel Grantham, Marissa Miller, Spatafora. Any questions about support staff? Extracurricular, Tracy Gallipo and Lori Patterson. A motion would be in order to approve the contract recommendations as presented.
Question?
Discussion?
And I have a question too, go ahead.
I just have one question because, I wanna abstain from one of these people.
Oh, okay.
But so I don't know how to go about that.
Okay. Is it,
It's in support staff first person,
okay.
so I don't know how to go about it.
You want us to approve them separately then?
Well, I just
Probably
wanna
should.
abstain from that because, it's too close to home. I don't have a problem with it, but someone on the outside world might.
Okay, how about Eric? How about the motion would be to approve professional staff?
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be fine.
okay.
Can I just ask quick, what's the Lori Patterson evaluator position? What does that do?
I think that's for special ed.
Evaluation, okay, got it.
All right, so all those in favor of approving the professional staff as presented? I feel like you're my prompter. Okay, I was trying. Support staff. A motion would be in order to approve support staff as presented. Motion by Tina, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
Passes by majority with one abstention. Extracurricular, a motion would be in order to approve contract recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
I don't,
Resignations, Janet Hughes, Wendy Trombetta, Allison Kula, and Heidi Brothers. A motion would be in order to accept the resignations as presented.
So moved.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Portrait of a graduate. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Love that.
Okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute break.